Hi again. Through my blog, my homepage columns and the video tabs across my site, you should have an idea of what Learning 2.0 essentially is and why it's so important. You'll have noted that Learning 2.0 is a paradigm shift to view learning more as a process involving learners rather than a product or an event. And you'll recall my own view that it's fundamentally a shift to stop wasting money by developing formal training, which can be very expensive, instead of getting people to collaborate through more informal methods like communities of practice. In the upcoming slides, we'll take a look at why it's important to have an organizational learning strategy, and more to the point, why you want your learning and development function to play a more strategic role in your company's overall organizational development. It is important to have learning and development strategy and to have learning and development department that plays a more strategic part within it. Here's why, though it happens very infrequently. Let's take three fundamental business elements. If your company has goals, if your company has a strategy to reach those goals, and if your company has core skills that makes your business unique and keeps your customers coming back, then wouldn't you want your learning and development department to be in sync with those elements and formulate their curriculum accordingly? If your learning and development department are teaching technical skills and soft skills without this kind of alignment, then you're wasting your time and your money. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen this happen. But let's take this a stage further. Let's assume, due to market demand and globalization, that your company suddenly needs to alter its core products and services. Again, you'd want to involve your learning and development function in this change to make sure that your company is well prepared developmentally for those newly required skills. This is a key part of the Learning and Development 2.0 shift. A strategic place at the table is required for learning and development department to ensure that your programs are balanced to your business. Now, how might you go about such a strategy? Here are a couple of tools I favor to help the process along. This is the 7S model, which is a common model used in organizational development circles. You can take a look at the model there and what each of the S's stand for. Here's a table of what they stand for. The superordinate goals, a little explanation that they are the aspirations of the company, the beliefs and principles that drive it towards success. The strategy of the company. And if you've got various business units, you might have separate strategies for each business unit. It's good to have them written down here, or at least recorded here. The systems of the company. And here I include the information systems as well as the processes of the organization. The style of the company, or more commonly the culture of the company. The staff of the company is basically the HR of the organization. Its abilities and perhaps the thousands in a large company of competencies that drive it towards success. The structure of the company, which is the way the organization is built, its operating divisions and its decision-making mechanisms. And finally, the skills of the company, and I like to define these as the core skills of the company. What is the organization especially good at? And in my opinion, these, and there should be a limited number of core skills, these play a significant role in the key learning and development effort, the focus of your learning and development department, especially when talking about formal training, should be aimed at your core competencies. Now, I like to use this model with executives and learning development professionals for two reasons. Firstly, from an organizational development and leadership perspective, executives are almost always the key change agents and leaders within any company. They should therefore have an understanding of all the elements of their business, but they should also have a tool that within one page allows them to look at these components for decision-making purposes. I like to build a one-page electronic mind map of the business during my own needs assessment so that I can understand their business quickly myself while consulting with them, hopefully about learning and development. But I also like to leave that mind map with them so that they can continue to build on it and use it as a tool for their own future decision-making purposes. Imagine having this one-page view of your company when you need to make significant change within the organization. The key to 7S is that you can't make a significant change to any one of the elements without impacting another, so it leads to better stakeholder identification and better decision making overall. Secondly, from a learning and development function perspective, it allows us to prioritize what a new learning and development department should focus on. All of the elements of 7S are important to any business or any function. But when you're launching or improving a learning and development department, my opinion is that emphasis should probably be given to the superordinate goals of the company, because you want your people to develop and be able to achieve those goals. The declared strategy of the company. If your learning and development function is not in alignment with that strategy, they may end up focusing on the wrong competencies for you. And the core skills of the company. And from previous articles, this is where I believe that formal training efforts should be aimed, basically due to the expense of formal training program development. Here's a graphic of the electronic mind map I like to build for the reasons just stated. You can see the little plus signs there next to each of the categories, and if you hit those plus signs you can basically build out a mind map of the different systems, strategies, structures within a company. Now this graphic I built in a tool called MindJet Manager. It's an application I love to recommend for every facilitator. It's a great tool to use in front of groups when you're building out particular lines of conversation. And you can see through the little plus signs how it expands. As I've said, this serves both as a learning tool for the people or person putting the map together, and it also serves as a continuous and live working document to assist leaders in solid change management, stakeholder identification, and quicker decision making. Another tool to help drive better strategic planning and learning development is the component business model. This is an IBM model that I've seen lots of organizations use to good effect, and it's used as follows. Across the top of the table are the core competencies of the organization, and down the side of the table are the accountability levels. Here's a few reasons why this is such a good model if you take the time to populate it. Firstly, you actually identify through your core competencies, and remember these are the inputs and outputs that sets your business apart from its competitors. You identify through those core competencies what really makes a difference in your business, and this clearly allows you to focus on the real meat of your business during decision-making conferences. Secondly, you clearly identify the accountability levels of the organization. And in a decentralized and matrixed organization where job descriptions and titles can be all over the place, this helps greatly divide accountabilities. The many titles still fit into one of the three business categories: direct, control, and execute, and then you can start to sort out which functional or cross-functional group is accountable for which core competency. Thirdly, the body of the chart also clearly identifies, for change management purposes, the many stakeholder groups within the organization. You can see on one page the different functions working at the right level and working within the right core competency. And finally, though there are probably many other reasons, it also shows up the gaps and duplication throughout the company. But here's how I like to bring it back to the learning and development function in a big way. What does identifying the core competencies of your company do for your learning and development function specifically? Well, one, it allows your learning and development function to prioritize those key competencies amongst the thousands that on a regular basis many companies try to manage. It also allows you to clearly identify where your formal training efforts should go. Remember, creating formal training is expensive. You should see my video, Informal Equals Normal. So you should focus on your core competencies, and that's my opinion, but if you're looking at 10% of overall effort for your training and development function, your learning and development function, I would recommend aiming your formal training efforts towards your core competencies. Thirdly, it clearly identifies where informal training efforts should go. By identifying your core competencies, you also clearly define all other competencies as non-core. What does this do for you? Well, if it's a particularly important competency, you might still want to drive formal training towards it. But if it's not, you can look for other methods immediately to deliver good training or good information in and around this subject matter. And you'll be able to look at my blog for further advice, or if you'd like further advice, drop me a line. I'll gladly get back in touch with you. Here's another reason though why I like this model along with the 7S model. Let's say your business changes its direction. Like a lot of companies these days, you broach into new markets and new technologies. You can clearly identify the new competencies within that model, or you can drop competencies that are no longer relevant. By involving your learning and development department strategically, you can clearly and seamlessly identify what formal and informal training needs to be developed. So there you have it. A couple of popular tools I recommend to help people understand the learning and development function and how it ties so closely to organizational development. And I think within amongst what we've just talked about, there are a couple of reasons why you should build a learning and development strategy to help you drive organizational development across the board. As usual, please feel free to drop me a line and let me know if there's anything else I can help you out with.